This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Some of the topics are addiction, fear, faith, self-compassion, relationships, codependency, emotional intelligence, and more. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
A few years ago, complementary and alternative medicine was defined as therapies that were not taught in medical school or offered in mainstream hospitals. But this no longer applies. Many complementary and alternative therapies are now offered in clinics and hospitals around the country, and their use and acceptance is growing rapidly. This is reflected in a new name used in many healthcare settings: integrative therapies. But whether you say integrative or complementary therapies or holistic practices or something else, it refers to the same thing: a wide array of healing practices that fall outside purely pharmaceutical or surgical treatments. Mary Jo Kreitzer. This episode is about natural alternative healing and other thoughts in between, and we'll be listening to Jeff Maziarek, who is the author of 2 books, the first being Spirituality Simplified, an easy-to-understand and entertaining work that provides an ideal starting point for anyone with a sincere desire to pursue a path of personal and/or spiritual growth. His second book, Cody's Journey, is a very personal memoir about his border collie, Cody, who passed away in 2005. Both books are available in print and ebook formats on Amazon, and Cody's Journey also can be found in ebook format on bn.com. Jeff's spiritual growth philosophy is based upon the works of many of today's most respected personal spiritual growth authors. It is rooted in the concept that each individual is personally responsible for creating the entire substance of their lives. Here is the interview with Jeff Maziarek.
Hello, Jeff. Welcome back. I guess my first question to you is, who is Jeff Maziarek today? Or you can answer my follow-up question. What have you learned about yourself since we spoke?
As I may have indicated to you in an earlier conversation, each day brings us a new opportunity to evolve into who we are becoming, because although life does seem at times that it's the same thing day in, day out, everything is in constant movement. I would say that since we spoke in May, that I've had several opportunities to put into practice things that I have learned about behavior and processing things from a spiritual perspective. And most of the times I would have succeeded, and other times I would have to say that I did not. So then you just try again tomorrow when you run into those situations where you have, as I don't know if you know the teachings of Abraham, but the step 1 moments where the contrast is quite strong and things are going against your plan or your comfort zone, and then you have to deal with something outside of that, and you get an opportunity to either provide resistant thought or just go, well, I'm going to look at this a different way. So in any event, I've been evolving as you have, and everyone else who may be listening to this at some point on each day that we live, that we get to live, which of course is a gift that so few people really acknowledge every day, I think.
So true. What is something about you that you are aware of and conscious of that has not changed?
I think that as from the time I was little to the time I am today, one very significant concept there, one element that hasn't really shifted very much is that I've always been more of a soft, soft energy male than a strong, dominant, slam the hand down, macho image type guy. I mean, I've did things like played sports and watched sports and acted like a buffoon watching them. But when it comes to, have I always been an emotional kind of soft energy guy? Yeah, I mean, and that hasn't changed. And witness of that to this day is if my wife Andrea and I go to a film and there's a part that's very emotional, I will be the one to get tears in my eyes before my wife does, to tell you the truth. So that hasn't changed. When we were watching Love Actually the other night, which is an annual Christmas movie, and at the very end, the Beach Boys song calls "God Only Knows What I'd Be Without You" plays, and sure enough, it's like clockwork. There Jeff goes again with tears streaming down his face. So yeah, I mean that's been a constant for as long as I can remember. Call it 59, 60 years, I would guess.
That's interesting. Not to say that some of those macho men are not as sensitive as you are. So what motivates you to be a good person, to do good in the world?
You always ask really cool questions. I don't know that I can give you an answer to that. I mean, it's an instinctive, intuitive kind of thing. And am I always doing good 100% of the time? No. Is my intention there? Yeah. I don't know. It's just a basic kind of awareness that I've developed over the years of the human condition, in the sense that, from the old Plato quote, be kind, for everyone is fighting a hard battle. Everyone is going through it. I mean, we're given this parenthesis in eternity to live, and it comes with no instruction manual. And we come in, and then we don't know when the parentheses gets added. So it's really kind of a we're all in this together kind of thing, which is not to suggest that I'm just a pure wash of love as I look out at humanity, because I have my judgments that I struggle with at times. But I think that it's kind of an instinctive thing. And I do think there's also a part of it that has to do with one's socialization. There's instinctive nature of being a human being that is love and, at its core level, fine. But then how did you grow up? What difficulties may you have faced? What were your parents like? And in my case, my mother was really, really compassionate. Lorraine was kind, always looking to do good. And I think that some of that just spilled over to me, and a lot of it, actually.
What a great influence to have. What is the world's greatest need, in your opinion?
The world's greatest need? I think it would comes to mind immediately is the work of Anthony DeMello. Not that everyone should read his work, the late Catholic priest who died in 1987, whose work I just love. But DeMello's concept that awareness is at the basis of everything. Awareness, not simply rote behavior, not being an automaton, not being easily manipulated, but awareness, to ask questions about everything, not necessarily verbally and out loud, but within your own mind when you're looking out at the world, to ask questions. Is that, what's the motivation there? Look deeper than the surface. I mean, I think if people around the world were trained to be more aware and to ask poignant questions in their mind and also outwardly to the world, it would be a better place. People are just too easily programmed and manipulated and stay in their patterns, and they don't take that discernment. They don't get to discernment of saying, what, does that even make sense? Why would someone do that? Why would somebody, for example, a harsh example, but why would somebody go blow themselves up or something like that, instead of just saying, oh, they're just evil, rotten human being who hates other human beings? How did that person get to that point? Awareness is asking the tough questions. And as we discussed in our last conversation, I mean, it's challenging in a world when you're being pulled so many directions. And everybody's on their own little hamster wheel who's not independently wealthy, for example, and maybe they are too because they didn't want to hold on to it. But it's difficult. There's so many pressing things, particularly in this society and all of the media that keeps hitting you all day long. It's difficult to have that discernment. It's easy to get into the behavior of saying, well, this is the way it is, and you don't look deeper. But that's not a solution to the world's problems. Not that they can all be solved instantly, but I do think, and I want to just interject this, and the quote from Joseph Campbell, one of my favorites, is, "The world's a mess. It's always been a mess. Our job is to straighten out our own lives." And as we do that, you've heard this before because you're very knowledgeable about this kind of content. As we do that, then we affect our little garden, and that garden borders somebody else's garden, and so on and so forth. We do this by example.
When I hear awareness, I think about self-knowledge, because this is really where everything's happening. And my mind, my perceptions of the world, it's not really much out there, but out there, it's actually very simple. All the laws of the out there in the world, they're very logical and simple. But I think the mind here complicates things. Not this mind at this moment, but other times before. And I think that's what happens with most people. They're just not aware of their own mental processes, of their own thoughts, how thoughts affect them. And that brings me to a topic that I'm exploring these days. What is self-love to you?
I think it's multiple things. I mean, at the core level, it's a deep appreciation for life itself is at the core, because when you appreciate the heartbeat itself, that the opportunity to be here, that, and Wayne Dyer's used this example, and the late Wayne Dyer, I've heard him, read it, he said it, I've seen him live. But this concept of the 10 million cells that are however many go out to fertilize an egg, whatever, that the one that got there is you. And so when you think about it in that context, you're a miracle. You were meant to be here. There was no accident. Whoever beats your heart and digests your food and keeps you healthy, whatever, must love you deeply. So why would you not do the same? Now, we could go off in a tangent and explain all the reasons why. But when you look for why you would love yourself, it's like, because every day you wake up, it's a miracle that you're still alive. And yes, even with all the societal influence of, if you got this fat here, or you're not big enough here, or you want blah, 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 the reality is everybody is so unique, and there can, in a universe where all the planets hang together in perfect balance, don't bang into each other, the sun doesn't cook everything, everything's at the right, whatever, everything is perfect, really. And so when you look at that, you say, well, so okay, God is perfection, or spirit, and then God made a mistake because he made my nose too big. It's like, or he or she or it. Come on, man. I mean, self-love, the core of it is the gratitude for life itself. And again, to repeat that you're not some errant accident. I mean, there was purpose in your creation, and there's purpose in your life. And some people take that to the purpose of some high super purpose that overarching going to affect the world. But maybe it's smaller than that. Often it is. It's what little corner do you influence that affects the whole in a positive way.
So true. Do you connect self-love to self-acceptance?
Yeah. Particularly More in the last several years, yeah. But with still an effort to make changes that I still feel like I want to make. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, I think it doesn't exclude that, right? There's space for change. From my experience, the most amazing change that I have made in myself, in my life improvements, came from that understanding, that place of self-acceptance. Once I accepted whatever I was fighting and rejecting in me, then everything opened up and it felt so much bigger and everything was possible. And has been this way for quite some time. So it's amazing how acceptance can create that space for change. In my last warm-up question, what do you think is the purpose and meaning of your life?
It's interesting. This summer, when I've told you before, we go to Greece. My in-laws have a house there for almost 40 years, and so we spend some time there every summer. And we have good friends there. Our crew, let's call them our crew, and a couple of our crew are deep thinkers like you and me. And so, that conversation came up this summer a little bit. I mean, I think that in the end, because we were talking this summer about exactly that. It's like, so what's the purpose? And I think it's to create and to explore and experience. The idea that you're going to build a corporation and employ 1,000 people or 10, okay, fine. That's all part of each person's purpose is unique. But in the end, I think it's just experience and enjoying and being grateful. And it's challenging, though. I mean, it's easy for us in a first world country to talk about these things. There are people, and I think I might even said on the last call that, okay, you're in a place where you're trying to eat every day and survive. It's always easier to be aware and to be growing and experiencing when you're experiencing things you really enjoy. But even in this culture and even in this first world that we live in, each day presents those challenges, right? So, our purpose is to not just get through it, but to grow through it and see more clearly the gift every day. I mean, God, because one day, recently, a dear friend of ours in England passed away suddenly. And it's like, oh my God, this is the stuff that slaps you upside the head, and you don't want it to happen a lot, but it makes you just, take that breath and go, wow, this is pretty cool. I'm looking out my back window and watching squirrels playing. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, man. This is life. I mean, it's just an amazing thing. And even when we have those challenges, we have to get to that core thing of our purpose is to explore and evolve and expand and see how we can become better while still at the same time accepting ourselves for who we are in that moment, right?
I was about to say that. Yeah, not just trying to become better, because then you're not going to enjoy anyway if you are judging, right?
Right, constantly on that thing. And then you never get anywhere. You're just constantly looking outside for something to change to be better. Got it.
Yeah, it's like waiting to be happy. That doesn't make sense. So let's talk about healing. What is healing to you?
It's allowing the energy that creates worlds to continue to do what it does without us stopping it, in a sense. I mean, I think that most of the time, and I want to clarify here, and I'm sure you won't mind me doing this, that, neither of us are licensed medical people or anything like that. I mean, this is just people sharing opinions about life experience in a particular topic area. I think that most of the time healing doesn't happen because at a deep level it's not being allowed, because when you look at what the body does on its own, and we can assist it, we can get into that, but the point is it's just that's how many times I have to say it's just a miracle what it does every day. I mean, to protect us and everything else. But I think that our emotions, our judgments, our thoughts, for sure, impede that allowing to take place, right?
Yeah. So now that's one of my questions, later questions about the mind, the power of the mind and thoughts. Do you think that there is such a thing as to be healed? Yeah, what is like to be healed?
Well, from what you talk about, of a specific thing, or
In this community of health, wellness, well-being, we talk a lot about healing. I never hear the word healed. I'm healed. I'm good. This is it. In every way, I don't hear that from body, mind, and spirit. I hear a lot the word healing. We are constantly healing. I think you mentioned before, we are growing, we are experiencing, discovering. Yesterday, I think I heard discovering, like every day, this constant change. And then maybe that's why I asked you that question about what has not changed in you that you're aware of. And that maybe that is the place that we should be most of the time, that place that's already there, healed, complete, and perfect as it is.
I think that you can use practical examples of people who went into to get care, and let's say whether it's conventional or non-conventional, and then they healed allegedly because the symptoms gone. I'm kind of the mindset, though, that you can repair the branch, but what if the root is doing something else? So if there's something within the body that's manifested, what if there's an emotional component to it that is the root of the problem, so that it maintains its position and it can be treated, and then it appears to be healed, but then it comes back? That always suggests to me that, kind of tying into what you're saying, that is there a healed if you don't get to the root? And there are examples of people who have something and then never have it again. Maybe they got to the, not maybe, they apparently they got to the root, or this could all be, somebody's opinion. I don't know. I do agree with you, though, that it seems to be like it's a constant process rather than an end result.
The healing that I was referring to was spiritual healing. Whatever the spirit is perfect. It's already healed. It's already there. But our conversation today will be mainly about physical and emotional, psychological healing. For those parts of us, we constantly need healing, I would say so. But that's another question that I have for you. Do you need healing these days, like physical, psychological, emotional healing?
Do I personally?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. There's always, and here, I don't know, this idea, I've said it before, there is no world. It's a mass hallucination. Everybody's just programmed. So
you're funny when you say that, right?
Well, when it's from the Course in Miracles, there is no world. It's a mass hallucination. Everybody projects their programming out to the world and things bounce off of it. And so, are there things physically that I have dealt with in the past that I continue to deal with that someone could define as chronic? Yeah. Are they critical, life-threatening? No. Would it be nice if they weren't there? Yes. Have I made attempts to resolve them? Yes. And you just keep living. Emotionally, I'm cool. Mentally, I'm good. Physically, like these little things. And I just do my best to deal with it and be grateful that that I haven't created something far worse,
Yeah, so true. I guess I asked the question because I rarely get sick. My next question is about your personal experience with alternative and natural healing. Do you have any experience that you can share with us today?
Oh, boy. Yeah, a couple examples. Well, first of all, at a high level, I think that, this is going to sound, whatever. It's going to sound whatever I'm just about to say.
Right, I like that. Just like you, right, Jeff?
Yeah. I don't prep for these conversations. So, I'm really a big proponent and believer of things, for physical healing that go all the way back to, and I know from reading some of your content, that you are the same way. That old Hippocrates thing, let food be thy medicine, in the sense that somehow in our culture, and I won't go into this at length, as I'll go to a couple examples of what you asked me about, but we get this idea that you can put anything in the vehicle and then the vehicle just take care of it, and we don't have to be cognizant or aware of what components are in the food. And so people don't seem to be able to connect up certain diseases with eating foods that are really not charged with life force, that are made quickly in mass from animals that are treated poorly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if it sounds like a cliche, the reality is the reality. You cannot be a healthy person if you don't eat healthy food, because if you don't eat, you die. And if you eat bad food, you can get sick. And this is, our culture is filled with people who make those poor choices. Now, in defense of some of them, they don't have any money to buy really healthy food. So, it's a complex situation. But I do really feel that nutrition, even though you would go to a doctor in today's conventional world and they wouldn't even ask about what you eat. What are your symptoms? What can we do to medicate it? But I just think that's really vital, and it's not just some myth. It's true. What you put in is what you become. So with that said, go ahead.
Common sense. It's common sense. Yeah.
Yeah. With that said, my experiences, and this could be a long conversation, which we're not going to have. I've had the blessing and the gift of being connected with certain people in this lifetime, particularly after I got to be about, I'd say, early 30s, so 30 years ago, who had an alternative awareness of different ways to treat things and to get healing effort accomplished, whatever. And so one of them was a person that did what's called energy healing, and her name was Lisa Jacobson, and she really helped me. I'm not going to get into exceptional detail. She really helped me with energy healing sessions, really to release emotions that were underlying physical symptoms, which, if you look at the works of Louise Hay, and there's a woman called Carol K. Truman, who wrote a book, I can't remember the name of it, but it has to do, and then another author named, I can't remember her name either. Sorry. These were books where, let's go to Hay. Hay is the whole concept that what experiences you have can get stored in your body through stress, if you will. And that based upon whatever type of illness you have, there's certain kind of emotional and thought patterns that may be underlying it. Now, some might disagree with that, but I do think there's a lot to that. So Lisa helped me with releasing some things where in the session, literally was very, very powerful. My body was shaking and moving and coughing and crying, and I wasn't doing anything to tell it to do any of those things. And this was maybe 20 years ago, maybe 18, 19, 20 years ago. It's just amazing. And then I've had, over the years, I had really tremendous success with things that would come up with my body with an acupuncturist named John. John Honey was his name. And this is non-conventional, kind of, to say the least. People know it exists. Acupuncture is, in the mainstream in a sense now, but it's still not really respected in my view. But I would go to John with things that, I literally got out of the shower one day and my lower back was in such pain. This is like maybe 2002 or something. And I didn't know, I could hardly walk. And I called his office. He said, well, come on out. So I drove out there in pain, 25 miles. And after one session, I would say that the pain was 80% gone. After two sessions, 95. And after the third, it was gone. And I never had it and still have not had it again. So these are the things that, okay, so if you had gone to someone else I don't know what, orthopedic something, whatever, and not saying this is everybody would have the same experience, but in this particular case, it was a case where he was able to resolve the issue with the assistance of the life force, and I never came back again,
That's incredible. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and the other two books, because I don't want to, was Feelings Buried Alive Never Die by Carol K. Truman, and The Secret Language of Your Body by a woman named Ina Segal. Those are the two books, in addition to Louise Hay work, that I really have found to be helpful.
That's great. Thank you for sharing these methods, these readings, because I know how helpful they are. You mentioned a diet. What is your diet like these days?
It's generally healthy. I would say like 90 percentile healthy by my definition. I think it's important in answering that question that one of the things that you see so common, I mean, it's just everywhere all the time, is the keto, not just keto, name all the different things. Okay, if you just eat this way, you'll be okay. You will be healthy. And I remember a while back, a gentleman I know who does craniosacral therapy, Anthony McGrath, a really, really gifted healer. He and his wife, Mary, she does the same kind of work. They were just saying that each person's physical hardware is just so unique and different that it really comes down to, it's very difficult to say, if you just eat this, everybody's going to be healthy, because each body seems to have, they do have unique aspects to them. So in my case, and again, I'm not promoting this as this would be good for everybody else. But for me personally, in 1986, I read a book called Fit for Life by, I think it was Harry and Marilyn Diamond. And what I got out of that book was, well, they talked about proper food combining, and I took to some of that. But what more importantly I took to was high concentrations of water, high water content food. So fresh fruits and vegetables, right? Not cooked to bits vegetables, and not necessarily raw vegetables, but just high concentrations of these kind of, foods. And one of the things they said, fruit only in the morning. Okay, most people now in a lot of science will dismiss that. I'm not proposing it for anybody else. Again, for me, I have done that for 30 some years. And I think that in a lot, like, the vegetable side too, I've done that as a practice. I do not eat anything but fruit in the morning for, just a few portions of that. And then every time we make a meal here, it always has either salad, kale, whatever, you name it. Fresh vegetables we cooked last night, organics, usually 90% of the time. And so we stick with that. And it has worked very well for me personally. I can't imagine going, and I don't want to, let's just fill in the name of the fast food restaurant. I will not denigrate them by name. Fill in X, Y, or Z. I don't go there. Haven't been to any of them for at least 20 years. And I just won't. And we don't go out to dinner very often because we don't know what's in the food. Now it's not paranoia. It's just practical. It's like we go to Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or whatever, and we buy our food. We read the labels, and then we prepare accordingly from there, right?
Yeah, that makes sense to me, right? You didn't mention meats, animal products. Are you a vegetarian?
I don't like labels. It's my first response. I would say that I will say no to that question. But we dabbled with that, and more than dabbled with it, in the mid-90s for a couple of years, and just felt drawn more towards the animal side, but not in a huge way. I don't personally eat any beef, for example. I don't eat pork. And I definitely always only buy organic because of the concern with quality of factory farmed food. I don't do a lot of fish because I don't like it.
Oh, you don't like fish?
No, and I don't do any shellfish because I really don't like it.
Right. Well, salmon's great for us, isn't it? A wild salmon.
Yeah, let's put that qualifier on there. Yeah, I have been getting. I buy a product that's quite pricey. That's fermented cod liver oil that gets the the omega-3 stuff taken care of, and it's not the most tasty thing to have, but that's it. But I'm not a big fish person. But yeah, but that has worked for me, and try to avoid the processed. I mean, this is stuff that you've written about and taught yourself. I mean, processed food, if you look at the box and you read the label, even organic varieties, if you read it and it has multisyllabic words that you would say, your liver would go, what? You just gotta have awareness and say, and it's people say, do you have that much discipline? It's like, well, yeah, when it comes to that, if it's my body and my health at stake, yeah, then I'm not going to eat that because that's just not something my body wants. And I don't have any problem. This is just, maybe it's my Virgo, I don't know, detail freak thing, but I don't have any problems. For example, I don't have any problem taking something that doesn't taste good if it's good for me. And I have no problem not eating something that's really tasty if it's bad for me.
Right. That's an intelligent way of living. I think I go a lot by things that make sense. It's pretty obvious the consequence of doing certain things over others. So, yeah, it's easy to make that choice, right? For me, in my case, and it seems like in your case too. So I'm wondering why, for so many people, it's different. Why do they think differently? Is the case with alternative and natural healing? Why do so many people choose conventional medicine over natural healing?
It's faster, depending upon the circumstance and the situation. If you have a pain and they give you a narcotic or an opioid, obviously the pain becomes less faster. You can't be that other person to know how much pain that is. So it's not any judgment that I'm making. It's just faster. And essentially most pharma medicines, from what I've read, are petroleum based. They're crafted to convince the body not to do something or to do something it's not doing. To try, and so in effect, it's constantly trying to trick the body into a behavior or an activity that it wouldn't be doing. Maybe it's something life-threatening. You got to convince the body to make more of something. There's a place for all of these kind of treatments, even, the conventional ones as well, or they wouldn't exist. I personally feel the conventional, you can't go to your acupuncturist to have your broken leg healed, right? I mean, that's an acute problem that needs to get resolved. But many, many, many other things that are chronic in nature, you can go to alternative care, acupuncture, and cranial sacral therapy. We use it called holistic chiropractor, and we use supplements from Standard Process, for example. I'm not plugging it; it just so happens to be the brand name. And we've had, really good health for a long time. And I also, but there's so many other caveats. How happy is your life? How unhappy are you? How much energy do you run that's negative? Because then that's really your body under duress. And, if you have a happy relationship and a happy life at home, like we do here, that helps to make you healthy.
I would say so. And that leads to my next question. Talk to me about the power of thought, maybe the power of healthy environments in relationships, and how we can consciously create our own physical and emotional dysfunctions.
People can say that, and I've heard it in the critique side of things, that, what do you mean what I think about expands? It's like, well, if you focus on anything too much, you build matter. Basically, how does a bridge get built? Somebody somebody has an idea for it, then somebody draws it, then somebody really gets to the meat of the detail of taking that drawing and turning it into physical form. In the end, that started as a thought. So when you consider that we think all day long, what are we thinking about? I mean, if we're okay, so here's an example with I don't want to say any names involved, but if someone is constantly watching, I will name a name, CNN or Fox News or whatever, MSNBC, any of the divisive kind of stuff, the separation stuff, and that is a bunch of fear and vitriol being poured out, and you're watching it all the time. I literally, and I can't prove it, but I literally believe it becomes part of your cells after a while. And as you raise your angst about it, or you run a lot of fear about it, that fear turns into cortisol or whatever, adrenaline, which then breaks down, I believe, into cortisol. And then you get that fight or flight, and it's constant almost, right? Yeah, I mean, literally, if you're always exposing yourself to that, if you're always wondering what's around the next corner. I think in the Course of Miracles, there's a quote. It says, "Your misery is a strange testament to your power." It's like meaning if you're focusing on the unhappiness and what could make you unhappy, what could make you sick, whatever. The mind makes that bridge. The mind can make a lot of things inside the body. I think that's my feeling anyway. So how do people get away from that? It's like we go back to step one in our first conversation, in our first question today about, or nearly first question, awareness. People say, "Don't put your head in the sand." It's like, well, yeah, I'm going to put it in the sand instead of looking at something that makes me angry. I mean, why don't you run that much adrenaline and anger energy? It's like, if you can't change it, if you got to accept it. And if you can't change it and you accept it, then don't pay attention to it anymore. Don't run energy towards it. I mean, it's hard when somebody has a physical symptom, though, and I'm guilty of it. Everybody else is. When something isn't right, then you pay attention to it. And that's just human nature. What you have to make best efforts to do, I think, is to do less and less of that. I mean, I remember reading a book called The Council of Light by Danielle, I forget her last name. She brings up a point in the book about how our bodies are like these miracles, right? We talked about that. And they're doing 95% of the time, they're doing everything perfectly. And then what do we look at? We look at the 5. Oh, God, my toe's sore. And then we think about our toe being sore the whole time, and we're looking at the 5 instead of the 95, right? It's just so common. And I'm not saying I'm immune from it's Danielle Rama Hoffman. I knew it would pop into my head. The Council of Light. Love that book. I feel like we all would be best to have some compassion, though, for people who are, of course, having physical problems, and recognize that as a rule, there is something going on in the society called advertising that's supposed to convince you that you have something or that you might. Just if you don't mute your TV or watch without commercials, you cannot get away from, in an hour, there might be 10 pharma ads on TV trying to plant seeds that you might be sick. So why pay attention to that? Again, the counter will be, oh, but if you're not aware of it, you could wind up dying from it. It's like, well, I don't know. Think about it. Back in the 90s and before it happened, you would never see an ad for anything pharma, but then they allowed that to start. And then from that point forward, the mind is a powerful thing. So you're constantly being bombarded with all of the stuff that could be wrong with you. And then you take ownership. Well, I have this. And maybe you do, but do you really want to say that out loud when words make flesh? I mean, acknowledge, get the information, get the treatment, but don't own it, because as soon as you start saying, I am a this, then you are that, and you'll stay exactly where you are, stuck.
That is so true. That made me think about a situation where I was talking to somebody, probably talked to more than one person about this, and received the same response. I don't watch TV, and I have lived, and when I was living alone without a television. I remember somebody talked to, he said to me, that doesn't make sense. Everybody owns a TV. Everyone watches TV. So you're a very strange person. And I remember feeling sort of strange. So I guess it goes back to what you said about programming. We are just the people who choose to live this life that it's in touch with themselves, with their own bodies and minds. Those people are seen as different, as strange. But I guess it's like the opposite, isn't it?
Everybody just does the best, as you know, to live life they can every day with whatever awareness they have. I mean, I have a relative who is absolutely passionate about educating the world about food and health and pharmaceuticals and the dangers and vaccinations and stuff like that. And he is so passionate about it, and I honor him for that passion that he does have. And he'll call and we'll talk about it, and I'll just say to him, in the end, the only thing you can control here is yourself. So you can share information, but the world's going to be what the world's going to be. And that goes back to your acceptance thing, not only of yourself, but, and the Joseph Campbell comment earlier I made, or the statement, the world's a mess. It's always been a mess. It doesn't mean you're not compassionate, that you don't want to see a better world. It just means that in the end, what is it that's within your purvey? What can you do? Control. You can take care of yourself, and you can be the example. You can be the person that someone says, wow, Valeria, you're X years number, you're this years old and this many years old, and look at you look just so really fit. And how do you do that? That's really cool. It's like, well, but take the ego aside of it. It's just, that's then how that's how the door opens to you sharing your story. And in your little world, you connect with that concentric circle, and that person gets affected in a positive way. That's the way it happens, regardless of the social media and the so-called social media influence over mankind or whatever. In the end, it's one-to-one, man-to-man, woman-to-woman, woman-to-man, whatever. I mean, it's the connections we make. It's how we live our lives as examples. The TV thing for me, I like to watch sports. And my challenge these days is to watch them unemotionally. And most of the times I'm okay with that. Sometimes I'm not. I like to watch old TV shows that are that have some like value to me, like Route 66 from the early 60s, which actually had wonderful scripts. So I'm defending my TV watching a little bit here.
You are. Absolutely. I see that.
But I only watch it late at night after I'm done working, because I tend to work at night, and I don't ever turn on the news channels. Ever do that.
Okay. So talk to me about magnet therapy. What do you know about magnet therapy?
It's interesting you bring that up. I think I have, the website is blog.spiritsimple.com, and you could learn about it more there. Right? We don't have enough time to really get too deep into it. I discovered it maybe like 2007 or something like that. And to try and cut to the quick, I mean, basically there's two sides to the magnet. Some say positive, some say negative, some say North Pole, some say South Pole, some say south facing, some say north facing. What I've learned is that the south facing pole of the magnet, and on the blog I have the links so that you could learn about this, has a relieving nature to it. It withdraws energy. So, for example, if you have an infection or inflammation in a certain body part, and let's preclude any of what emotion might be causing it if that happened or something, but let's just say you cut yourself or something like that, that if you put the south-facing pole of the magnet and just tape it onto your body for a while, you can see a benefit from it. I can give you an example. This summer I was in Greece and I cut myself pretty bad, and I put the natural whatever I had, bandaged it, and then I put on top of that, I put the south-facing pole of a magnet I brought with me. And these are not your dime store magnets that sit on the fridge. These are neodymium, I think I might have the pronunciation wrong, but they're very strong. And so the next morning, I had like no inflammation. The healing was not instantaneous, like sewn up already, but the improvement was dramatic. Okay, overnight. Now, you're not necessarily supposed to wear the thing overnight, but I'm a devil-may-care guy sometimes, so I just said, what the heck.
Experimented.
Yeah. And so then the North Face is supposed to be like, okay, if there's no inflammation or but a body part needs strengthening, then you would position that over that part. And again, the article that I have linked to on the page will explain it more. But I've used it. I still use it. I mean, anytime I have any kind of like minor thing like that. I mean, there's certain precautions that in the material that I link to on there that people should read and understand it in detail. But I just think it's another tool in the toolbox. And I'm going to interject something that's related, because magnet is an earth-related kind of field. Whatever is, I don't know that I even wrote about it on my blog ever, but I'm a big proponent of this concept, which I'm sure you've heard of, earthing. Where you have your feet on the ground, because the earth is constantly emitting negative ions because of lightning strikes around the planet, and the negative ions enter your feet, go into your body, and they counterbalance the positive ions that result from free radicals. So it turns, if you go to earthing.com, you can learn more about it. And no, I don't get any money for that, but I mean, I just really have found benefit. For example, we actually sleep on a grounded pad, and grounded down to the ground beneath our bedroom in the ground. I mean, it's not like in an electrical outlet in the the neutral part or whatever, the grounded thing. It's down into the ground. And I swear to God, I will do yard work at my age, and I will come in like a decrepit old man, and then I go to sleep that night. I wake up in the morning, I'm fine. No problem. No, and when I do weightlifting or I do push-up regimen, I do, healthy things, whatever, physical exercise, I sleep grounded. The amount of pain from the weightlifting, you're always going to get some soreness the second day, usually, if you're pushing. But my healing times, I swear to God, this is my experience from the grounding, which, ties into the magnetics, I think, of the earth, has been evident to me since 2012, when we first bought the grounded stuff. I really, I have a mat under my desk right now. I'm talking to you. There's a grounded mat, and then at night we sleep on the mat, on the grounded sheet, or actually it's a pad now. It used to be a sheet, but I bought a new product and swear by it, man. The earth. Think about it. People were sleeping on the earth until there were houses, right? And then things were made of wood, which is actually conductive in some sense to it. It's like blacktop doesn't conduct, so you don't walk down a blacktop straight, for example, and get any healing benefit. But the earth is our mother, man. I mean, it's constantly doing its thing to clear up the stuff we do to it, and it also is there to help heal us if we're open ourselves up to that possibility and that opportunity, rather.
Right. It makes so much sense to me. Yeah. Everything that you have talked about, healing, the connection between healing, health, well-being, and all these methods. And speaking of methods, what is the connection between healing and affirmations?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because recently I've gone back and listened to some material from the teachings of Abraham about affirmations, and it's difficult to answer that. I mean, I think that it's challenging if you have a symptom that's dominant in your consciousness, and you sit there and say, I am healthy, I am this, I am, and yet you still have the pain throbbing in your foot, then I don't think the affirmation is going to do anything. I think in that teachings of Abraham stuff, I'm really been into that more lately. This idea that you have to get on the right end of the stick, because what you the opposite of what you want is obviously on the other end of the stick. So if you're paying attention to what you don't have, then no matter how much you want what's on the other end of the stick, you're not going to get it, right? So I mean, I think it's a challenging road to hoe. It just depends how pure the energy is. How much are you connected to your inner being, to your source, before you're saying these things? Because the subconscious is saying, oh, wait a minute, I don't feel like that. So I don't know that I have an easy answer to that one. It really comes down on the purity of that connection. I mean, what end of the stick are you going after? If it's what you don't want, you're just going to make it more of it, right?
Right. Have you tried affirmations before?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I think that I've been on the wrong end of the stick too many times, looking at what I don't want and wanting to get rid of instead of focusing on what it is that I intend to have or create or allow. And so I'm, jail me for that. I mean, I certainly have been on the wrong end of the stick for that, but it doesn't mean I don't keep making efforts, right?
Right. Don't we all?
Exactly.
What about the connection between healing and gratitude?
I think there's an obvious connection there that when you're in that mindset, you can't help but raise your vibration. This concept that most everybody in the metaphysical world, what is your vibration? It's it's like how are you vibrating? It's like, well, joy is the high level vibration, right? So if you're constantly muttering and complaining and discussing the drama and everything that's not going well, you're not going to get very far with things. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Remind me again, because I got off on that tangent, the question.
Yeah, gratitude, the connection between gratitude and healing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, because gratitude is a high vibration thing. It's that inner smile, if you will. I mean, for example, I can sit here like you can, or anybody else that may happen to listen to this, and think about something that really, it doesn't even have to be a thing, or it could just be a past experience. It can be something that you enjoy just tremendously, right? So I can think about sitting on the terrace we have in Greece and looking out at the Aegean Sea about a mile down the road, and just being filled with gratitude. And you just can't help but get an inner smile because you can feel it. And so I think when you're grateful, definitely it raises vibration, and as vibration raises, then dysfunction that is associated with lower vibration would tend to melt away. Now, that doesn't mean you have instant healing, but certainly the more you get in a grateful place instead of the opposite of the stick, which is complaining about what is, you're going to be vibrating higher. You're going to be more in the joy profile than you are, and certainly on the other end.
Do you connect transcendence, spirituality to healing?
I think so. I mean, in the sense that everybody, again, this is the Course in Miracles also says that everyone's curriculum is their own. I have hallucinated my own world, just like you have yours. And we have, I've used this example before. We have these Venn diagrams where we intersect circles and we have some commonality, but I have created my own life. So yeah.
What about love? Do you believe in the power of love when it comes to healing?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, because this is where you've been really diving the last few months, is, it's at the core of everything anyway. The more that the purity of that energy, and we're not talking about romantic love here, some man-made thing. We're talking about the love of the force that does all, is all, right? I mean, so yeah, I mean, when you're in that energy, that's the energy that facilitates the healing, right?
And that was my original question. What kind of love has the power to heal? Would you say unconditional love?
Right, which I find it interesting, that term, because I think that for human beings who say that, I think it's a nice euphemism, but I don't know, man. I don't think it. Unconditional means unconditional. That means, I mean, I think that love is really either the kind of Buddha-esque, Jesus, these kind of spiritual and energies, God force, as Stuart Wilde, the author, used to call it, because human beings are still, human beings. They might be God manifest in physical form to experience and create and evolve, and at the same time, unconditional. I mean, that means that you would still love and treat no different the person who, let's say you were married and found out that your partner had had affairs with 10 other people. And it's like, well, I unconditionally love him or her. Really? I find that hard to believe that someone could do that. But I think the love you're talking about that heals isn't the human defined love necessary by any means. I think it's that essence, that heartbeat, right?
Yeah. You don't think or believe that humans are capable of loving unconditionally?
Yeah, and if you want me to be honest, no, I don't. I don't. Not from my life experience, but that's from what I've seen. There's the idea of the mother's love. Okay, parent, father, mother. But when it comes to human relationships, I don't know. I don't know, man. I've not seen that. I mean, I couldn't just go off and do all kinds of stuff, and my wife would unconditionally love me. I think that's inappropriate to expect her to, actually.
So, do you think or believe that you can unconditionally love yourself?
Now, that's a different story, because I think that now you're not dealing with another person who may conduct their behavior in certain ways that would not necessarily make you feel all that loving. I think when it comes to yourself, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's not, very few of us, I think, do it because we've been programmed to look at ourselves with such disdain when we don't meet certain standards that somebody else set up for us. But I think, yeah, that's possible. I mean, that's probably, a good goal, a good objective, a good desire, whatever, however you want to say it.
Oh, yeah, ideal, right? Of love. And I believe we are capable of doing that, of loving ourselves unconditionally. And from that, we can love other people. If you don't love yourself unconditionally, you cannot love life or anything. Everything will reject you or will feel that way. Or you will reject others. So, yeah, I like what you said. This is a good ideal.
Right, because if you're projecting your own stuff all the time, then the only thing you can modify is your own projection. And I want to interject something here about that, because I don't know if I said this to you on the last call, but I think it's one of my favorite analogies that I think I made up, because I don't think I read it somewhere. I think it just came to me one day that if you know, and if this is repetitive, I apologize, but it's really powerful to me is to think of it from this perspective. People say, why can't I change more easily? What is it that keeps me, stuck in this mode of doing these things? And then I don't like myself when I do this. And I think it's because I use the example, and I didn't ever write this anywhere, but this idea that since we live in the computer age for a long time now, if you look at your computer, like I'm looking down on mine right now on the ground here, when you turn it on, the first thing you see is a screen that says the name of the manufacturer, so Dell or HP or whatever. And then after that, you see Windows or Apple or whatever. And the thing is when it first turns on, it's using software that's built into it. It's using software called the BIOS, Basic Input Output System. And so the BIOS is programmed at the chip level to conduct all of these basic functions and not so basic. And so when you consider that, and then what happens, it boots, and then you can, there's Microsoft Word. Now I know what to do with that. But you have nothing to do with the part that boots up. So then if you look at your life and you say, okay, it's been proven pretty much that from the time a child is born until it's about 5 years old, its mind is always in the what you call theta mode, which is that it can be programmed easily. I mean, basically it believes everything it hears. And so imagine then that you're a child, which we both were, and that some between those ages, that all kinds of information hit our consciousness from in that time frame. And that's your BIOS. That's the stuff we don't know about. And then so it boots up, and so that's where we get our emotional reactions that are almost instantaneous, is stuff that's that old or things that hang on in our lives. That's in the BIOS. And so we when we get to a certain level of awareness, we say, I'm not happy about this. It doesn't make me happy to do this or behave this way or think this way. So I'm going to use these tools, and I'm going to study, and I'm going to read books, and I'm going to interact with other people who are doing the same thing. And I'm going to overcome these things. And I'm bringing all this up because I think it's important to recognize that we can do the very best we can do to change ourselves with what we see. And what we don't see is that iceberg underneath called the bios that's there. Now, it doesn't mean you get depressed and say, it's over, I'll never be able to change. It's just to be aware. It's the awareness of that piece that says, there I go, reacting again. I wonder what it is within me that created the initial movement for that reaction to occur. And that, to me, is just so vital when you look at other people's behavior and you realize that everybody's been, like I said it to you a number of times, everybody's been programmed. So what are those programs? Maybe we never find out exactly the event that created the this to that, but just the awareness that there's parts of me that are unexplored and I don't even know how to get to them, but they show up in behaviors. And that's our key, is to then look at ourselves with discernment. And it's difficult often on any day-to-day basis. I mean, I had an experience today where I kind of lost it, briefly about an issue with the computer. And the only difference between me of today and me of 25, 30 years ago is that I can kind of observe myself acting like an idiot, but people don't have that awareness. A lot of people don't. And so I guess I'm leading to a point is that we do the best we can to make ourselves better people. And we have compassion, and we go back to the unconditional love of self, which is, well, no matter what's in the BIOS that's inside me that I don't know, I'm still who I am. I accept myself, and I will do better. I will observe.
I love what you just said. Yeah. But I just don't like the part that you said, I'll do better. Even if I don't do better, I'll accept and love myself anyway. I think there's a lot of the conditioning that we're talking about, that you talk about, programming. A lot of these programs, like you call it, it's run in the background, and that's not really possible to stop them at times, like you just mentioned today. But your awareness, the light of your awareness, your unconditional love for yourself, it can change everything, because now you're not going to get stressed out and judgmental and even angry at yourself, because now there's understanding.
Right. No, I agree. And I interject back to, better. I'm not in disagreement with you. I mean, the acceptance is more, is the better energy than say, I'm going to do better, because then that's a self-judgment, and that's not unconditional love of self. So it's not like I stand corrected, but you have educated me. I agree. I mean, I think what I'm most pleased about is that, okay, I mean, not most pleased, but pleased about what happened to me today, for example, is that I'm not sitting here today going and mentally beating myself up for what I did. It's just, hey, you just do the best you can, right, with what you know. But you're right. When I call it like that hardwired thing, when something happens that has to have begun at some point, the original mover, if you will, that created the ability to respond, or those types of responses so rapid fire, you don't know what that is, but it comes so quickly that the only thing you can do is weather the storm and then move on from that point. Self-acceptance, self-love. I did the best I could, and we'll see what happens next time.
Yes, I like that. Yeah, right. But to really do that, I guess it's not easy, because then it goes back to the other programming of judging ourselves. Practicing that for too many years, that becomes programming too. So that it's now unpracticing, now trying to do the opposite. Okay, this will happen again, most likely. And that's fine. That's life. That's life just manifesting as me. It might be the highest form of whatever we call spirituality, to experience this life in a human body. It's to just accept it all, be at peace with everything.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it reminds me of a song quote from a guy named Dan Fogelberg in the 70s. It says, one road is simple acceptance of life, but it's not really simple, but he's right in this, I mean, it's like you can take it two different ways. I mean, it's looking out at the world, the same thing. It's a mess. It's always been a mess. And that doesn't mean you can't hold up intention for it to get better. But, how much of your energy through your crown chakra are you going to dedicate to something you can't do anything about other than in your own little world? And you're cultivating your own little garden, as Wayne Dyer once said. So.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that word keeps coming back every time I think about, I write, I think, I talk about self-love and love itself. Acceptance always comes up like huge. Yeah, this is it. I connect acceptance to inner peace. That's the only way really to be at peace within. And that's like you said before, which is incredibly wonderful. It is a miracle to be alive. And that's the truth. It is a miracle to be here. My last question to you, Jeff. What 3 things in life you believe everyone should experience before they die?
We could say something high level like, but then I haven't done it myself completely. What is true experience true self-acceptance? I don't, okay. I think I don't have anything that just comes to me right away. I mean, you talk about activities. What activities should they experience? I don't know. I think it's, I can't name 3 things. I'm going to take a moment here to just contemplate this. I mean, the only word that keeps popping into my head, and that I'm not giving you a good close here, but the idea of this, it's not 3 things. It's awareness. It's truly experiencing being aware, truly experiencing being grateful, truly experiencing being, well, those 2 things, and then you offshoot from there, awareness and gratitude. And then I guess for me, a true humility of recognizing that you only know what you know, and you only have the right to work on what is you. You know what I mean? It's like these are not the kind of answers that maybe I would come up with if I was in a different frame of mind. But I think you've just kicked my butt with that question, because I don't have those 3 easy things to come up with. I'm sorry.
No, it's absolutely fine. It is what is, right, in this moment. And I love that. I live for this. Awareness, gratitude. You're talking about powerful things. It has been, again, a meaningful and fun conversation, Jeff. You're a lot of fun to talk to and to listen to. Where can we find more information about you, what you do, and your books?
I think the best place to go is just that daily inspirational message site that I've had for over 12 years now, www.pondercentral.com, because on the nav bar there's links to other things that I've done, books I've written, Cody's Journey, my second book, and Spirituality Simplified, my first book.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again. And I'll talk to you soon.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. I always love having conversations with you.
I'll talk to you soon, Jeff. Bye for now.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Jeff Maziarek, please visit his website, pondercentral.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. I want to thank the Patreon members, Lawrence McGrath, Mark Basden, Terry Clayton, and Aidan Vickrock. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.